February meeting of the City Council. If you could all rise and join me in welcoming Reverend Halstead from the First Congregational Church.
Please join me in a spirit of prayer. Generous God, we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past, the present, the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and the community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on all our deliberations and on our effects here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You all be seated. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Yes. Councilor Bouchard.
Here.
Mayor Boulay.
Here.
Councilor Brown. Here. Councilor Champlin.
Present.
Councilor Fennessy.
Present.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Here. Councilor Keach.
Here.
Councilor Credevit. Here. Councilor Mattson.
Here.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Excused.
Councilor McNamara.
Here.
Councilor Nyan.
Present.
Councilor Pierce.
Present.
Councilor Rice Hawkins. Here. And Councilor Todd.
Here. Very much. Good to see everybody. We have the minutes of January 9th, 2023 before us. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of January 9th. Is there any discussion, comments, concerns, thoughts? Seeing none. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Tonight, that brings us to our consent agenda. Before I look for a motion, I'll just simply notify the council that item 17 has been removed by Councilor Brown. Items 21 has been removed by Councilor Nyan. With that, without those two, can we get a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any other things want to be removed? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The consent agenda is approved. That takes us to our public hearings this evening. Madam Clerk, item 26A, please.
Yes. It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 34, Personnel Rules and Regulations, Article 3410, Attendance, Holidays, by adding the observance of Juneteenth.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, as you're aware, based on your negotiations with, labor negotiations with the various unions, the city discussed adding a proposal to add Juneteenth to the calendar of holidays and requested it be set for a public hearing tonight.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for the manager? Seeing no questions, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify on this item? Sir. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, mayors, members of the city council, city manager, and city clerk. I'm Roy Schweiker, and I would like to be in opposition to this item. I think that unions, can ask for what they want, but ultimately it's the city that has to decide what's for the benefit of the city. I think that giving another holiday will have a disparate effect on different city employees. Some people in some departments will get, extra money because they'll have to work those days. When I worked for the state, if one of these holidays happened to fall on a Sunday, you'd get as much as double and a half time if you happen to work on one of those days. Whereas other employees will simply get an extra day off. And once again, depending on what your job is, it may really be a day off, or maybe you'll just have to make up that work on another day for no additional pay. So I think that it's different benefits for different city employees, and therefore it's not particularly desirable. I think that the city employees already get 12 and a half holidays, which is probably more than nearly anybody else in the city gets. And so I think it's bad for the public to see that the city employees keep getting more and more holidays as compared to they don't. A lot of the working people in the city work on a lot of the days that the city gets as holidays. And if you believe that city services are valuable, then maybe you should consider we should be working more days rather than fewer. Like, I think more departments should be 7-day-a-week departments. It would certainly be valuable if general services had highway people available every day there's a lot of work that could be done on Sunday downtown that is much less easier to do then than on a weekday. And so I think, we need to look at, sure, I mean, no employee is going to work 7 days a week, but I think we need to look at the city working more days rather than fewer. The library, for instance, the Portsmouth Library, which everyone puts up as a model, is open on Sundays. The Natural Library is open on Sundays. Our library is not. So we need to be thinking about, city employees. You're not an individual employee working more days, but somebody in the city working more days rather than fewer days. I'm sure there's a cost to this, but I mean, that's part of the negotiations. If you want a lesser raise for another holiday, that's fine. But I just think overall, it's not a good idea to have more city holidays. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Swicker. Anyone else wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk. Actually, before I ask the clerk to read this, would anybody object to hearing item 26B and 26C together?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk.
The first item is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 34, Personnel Rules and Regulations for leave. The second item is a resolution appropriating the sum of $39,250 for paid family medical leave and $11,500 for referral bonuses as new benefits for city employees, and authorizing the use of $50,750 from general fund unassigned fund balance for this purpose.
Thank you very much. And you'll all notice that you have item 26C is a revised resolution with the correction to the spelling. So with that, Mr. Manager.
I'd like to ask Jen Johnson. Okay, come on.
Good evening, Council, Mayor,
Welcome.
City Manager Svelt. I'm also bringing up Audrey Masters with me, as she served on the Recruitment and Retention Committee that we formed to look at these items as a collective group. And Audrey's going to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives in here, and I'm going to take on the paid family medical leave portion when we get to that. I just wanted to talk briefly about the committee that formed to bring forward these recommendations. It was based on a similar committee at the state that was formed under Senate Bill 226, which utilized some funding from ARPA to create a committee to look at retention and recruitment at the state level. And they were able to use some funding there to create some similar programs at the state level. So in an effort to remain competitive and try to deal with the current employment climate, we formed a committee with several generations, different union representation. We had diversity on this committee, so that we were trying to look at everything from the perspective of recruitment and retention. I'm sure you've read the report, and Audrey's going to talk about some of the initiatives that we put forward, like the annual leave, the bonuses as part of recruitment, and then I'll come in, as I said, to talk about paid family medical leave.
So as Jen said, we met to discuss kind of both recruitment and retention. We started with the recruitment piece and sort of tackled some of the low-hanging fruit initially, and reviewed the onboarding process specifically just to see if we could streamline the process, make it more efficient and more implement some cost savings there as well, which some of those initiatives are highlighted specifically in the report, so I won't dive into the detail of that. And the HR department specifically also took on some additional efforts to raise awareness and just kind of get the word out there about some of the open positions and how interested candidates can find those open positions other than some of the more traditional manners. The other thing that we tackled with the recruitment piece was the access to insurance and trying to speed that up a little bit. Currently, new hires are offered health insurance and dental basically on the first of the month following 30 days of employment. And so we had kind of talked about it as a committee to see if it was possible that we sort of expedite that and provide insurance to new hires upon the first of the month following the date of hire. And so after kind of discussing it with Jen, and then Jen went back to our benefits consultant, We kind of looked at, what are the costs, benefits, that would go with that. And it was decided that there was pretty minimal cost to that, because typically, within that 30-day window that we would essentially be moving things up, there's very few claims that people would be, looking to have service, health services for, or dental services for. So it's unlikely that we would see a large cost addition to that. But it might also help, to sort of increase interest in positions. I know some committee members also shared some stories of new hires that had to sort of select their hire date so that they could sort of minimize their time on COBRA. So we might alleviate some of that and might be able to get people onboarded actually a little bit faster by implementing this. With all of that kind of behind us, we then shifted our focus to some of the retention efforts and what can we do, once we get new hires on board, or to keep some of the current employees and keep them interested. Jen will talk about in a little bit one of the big initiatives, which was the paid family medical leave. Another item that we talked about was the annual leave. Currently, employees don't get access to their annual leave bank until they've had 6 months of service. They do accrue that time, accrue hours in that time, but they don't actually have access to use it until they hit that 6-month mark. So we had talked about, as a committee, sort of opening up that 6-month mark and essentially providing employees immediate access to their accrued annual leave upon first accrual, which typically would happen once a full month of work is achieved. So it wouldn't necessarily be on day one, but it would be after, give or take, about 30 days of employment. The committee worked with city administration collaboratively to develop the new accrual tables that are highlighted in both the ordinance and the report. These new tables, you'll notice, provide a faster rate of accrual, so it sort of shortens those bands of service time so that employees can get essentially more time a little bit sooner. And you'll also notice that the rates for exempt employees are a little bit higher than non-exempt, because the thought process behind that was that exempt employees tend to put in a lot of extra time that's not compensated, either with overtime or comp time. So this just sort of helps to make up for that. The other thing we did as well with this ordinance is we also removed the department head bonus, just sort of as a trade-off per se between the two. A couple other things that we had talked about was a sign-on and stay-on bonuses. In this tight labor market, it's been increasingly difficult to hire seasonal and temporary employees, particularly like plow drivers, lifeguards, employees of that nature. So one of the things we had talked about was doing a sign-on or stay-on bonus. The structure of this bonus might vary slightly depending on the department's needs. For example, General Services had posted 2 types of winter seasonal positions for a total of 7 open vacancies, open positions. And they were actually able to hire 2 new employees by implementing this bonus, and they were able to manage it sort of within their budget. And the open positions for the upcoming summer season have been posted already, and that advertisement would be updated to include the sign-on and stay-on bonus if it's approved. The other thing that we had talked about was a referral bonus. Given, again, in the tight labor market, it's really important that we use sort of every tool that we have. And one of our greatest assets in recruitment is the current employees that we have, because they can really attest to the culture of the city, what it's like working for the city, and some of the bonus, the advantages and things that they enjoy about working for the city. And I know the Society for Human Resource Management estimates that it can cost upwards of $4,000 to hire a new employee, which, when you start doing that over, the number of vacancies that we have can really add up quite a bit. So we had kind of talked about what's a reasonable number for this bonus and what does the structure look like. And what we came up with was $500 that would be paid to the referring employee, so that would be the current employee, upon the upon hire. which pending, the only requirement would be that the applicant actually has to list that employee on their application. So it's not like they could come in and, you know, make friends with somebody and be like, oh, this person, you know, recruited me. And then the remaining $2,000 would be paid upon successful completion of the new hire's probation. So that there's a little bit of incentive, not just for them to come and work, but also to stay. We're confident. We think that this would help also to build some mentorship and sort of be a sort of built-in support system for new employees as well. You know, just having somebody that they know that works here that they can kind of go to and, you know, can count on.
Split the bonus.
Exactly. So Jen, do you want to talk about some of the paid family medical leave pieces?
And before I touch on the paid family medical leave, another component of the report was just talking about your buy-in to offer flexible work schedules, alternative work scheduling, remote work based on operational needs within each department. So we talked about the different aspects that might look like depending on which department you're in. For instance, the fire department will not be able to do work from home for a paramedic, but it could work for somebody in human resources for a day to work on a project. So we're looking for, like I said, your approval of giving the department heads that flexibility to look at what schedules would benefit the operation and the department as far as retention goes. Because that has been a huge push since COVID, is people requesting more flexibility in order to manage their quality of life, but also to manage their productivity at work. Particularly when we post jobs now, you even have to notify government jobs, which is the ATS, the applicant tracking system we use, whether the job is a hybrid job or a work from home job. It's actually one of the categories now that all jobs are categorized by. So that's another piece of the report that I'm sure you saw. Do you want to ask questions now of the piece that Audrey did, or do you want me to move into the paid family medical leave portion?
People have questions now, or do you want to keep going?
Okay.
Keep going.
So paid family medical leave was passed by Governor Sununu starting 1/1/23. It is the first voluntary paid family medical leave program. Many states have this offered as a mandated program. The voluntary aspect means that organizations can elect to offer it, but also individuals in organizations that don't elect to offer it can sign up, and then the organization is responsible to withhold premiums and send to the provider, which in New Hampshire is MetLife. The state has enrolled over 8,000 employees into paid family leave. They're only offering the family portion. There's 2 sets of leave available, both medical for an individual, an employee, and then family leave, which would cover leave that an employee needs to take to care for a family member, whether it's a parent, a spouse, or a child. And there are some other definitions in there that qualifies family. The paid leave can be purchased in 6-week increments or 12-week increments. What's proposed before you is a 6-week allotment. The leave covers 60% of base wages. We're looking at doing this because, A, we think it is an important thing to do, particularly around bonding for parents that are not the birthing parent. When you give birth, we have short-term disability that covers 6 to 8 weeks of leave for you. When you are the dad, for instance, you get 3 days of family leave to cover the time. Otherwise, you are using your annual leave or you're on non-pay. And that's fallen behind. That's not really up to date as far as a benefit offering. So this would allow us to give that 6 weeks of paid leave where a new employee wouldn't have access to pay. We're able to stay competitive with state employment because that's one of our largest competitors that we lose applicants to. Just this month we lost 2 employees to state police. And the cost in this initial year is fairly competitive. The portion that you see in the report is to get us through this fiscal year. The cost in total is about $75,000 for the entirety of the calendar year. And I think that's enough detail to go on, but I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Great, thank you very much. Who has questions? Anyone?
Thank you, thank you. I support all of this. My one question is about, how about our long-term employees? Are you seeing any burnout, or do they feel like stressed out, morale?
I would say engagement is, has been impacted. I think just dealing with COVID and dealing with the openings, we have the vacancies, it is leading to people to feel overtaxed. I know the police department, that's a big deal, and not just for long-term employees. We have staff that haven't been here very long, and they're in forced overtime situations because of vacancies. But I would say you could feel that across the organization in the conversations I've had.
And a follow-up, do we see with salaries with our longer-term employees and new hires or recent employees getting close to each other?
We're having to hire further into the wage scale to be competitive. So there's that issue where you may know that the wage scale goes from A to P, so there's 16 steps. And usually we're advertising up to step H, but we're often having to go beyond that to bring somebody in. And so you're getting closer to those long-term employees.
And how do we address that going forward?
I did put in a PCR for the upcoming budget cycle to do a class and compensation study. We haven't done one since 2009, and the recommendation is to do one more frequently than that. And I'm hoping that that would get approved so that we could look at the city as a whole as far as the compensation that we provide, and to make sure that the labor grades are assigned correctly based on changes. And we have some pretty antiquated job titles. It makes it difficult to recruit when you're advertising. I'll use an example of fiscal technician 3. You don't really know what that means. A comparable position in the private sector would draw in more candidates because they know what they're getting as a job. So we're looking at that piece for the classification part.
Thank you.
Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you believe that I think it's outstanding that Human Resources took the initiative to pull together this panel of employees to take a deep dive into our competitiveness as an employer and the issues around recruiting and retention that you've already outlined to really bring us into the 21st century. I'm really excited about the work that you've done, and that's my way of saying job well done. Thank you so much.
Councilor Pierce.
Thank you. Question, going back to the work at home, do we have any employees now that do that?
Yes. No, none of them do it on a full-time basis.
Right.
Okay.
But they're doing a hybrid situation?
Yes.
Without getting too far into the weeds, how do you measure productivity?
Well, I have one in my department, so I'll use that as an example because I'm close to it. On Wednesdays, I have an employee who will be at home, and she tries to do payroll because we're on a short time frame to open a warrant weekly because we do a weekly payroll. And I can measure the productivity knowing that we're able to open this warrant and get payroll approved each week, and by her access. Not just my access to her, but the timekeepers in every department that she works with. So it's been about a year that this has been going on. It helped when we were starting Munis as a new ERP system because there was a lot to learn, and it helped her focus on that. But throughout the year, we've been able to see that it's productive. So that's just one small example within my department that I'm close to, but I'm sure you could poll other departments, and they have their mechanisms for measuring productivity and for addressing when there is a problem. And I think it has more to do with access and responsiveness.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Nye.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnston, I agree with Councilor Champlin. Very good job. Could you please comment on the group's decision to recommend a referral bonus going entirely to the employee, not split between the recruit and the employee?
Well, we talked about two different types of bonuses, a sign-on bonus for the recruit and the referral bonus. And we were trying to address using our employees to talk about the culture, to get our word out there and to show them that this was a good place to work. So this was one aspect that we thought would be beneficial. More so than, for instance, a bonus for staying with the organization once you signed on. So that it was a matter of cost. We looked at what would be the best benefit and impact the employees that we currently have in a positive way.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify on these items? Either one of them. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26D, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan, Class Specification Index for the Assistant Information Technology Director position.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Other members of the council, the IT director looked at this with myself and the HR director, and looking at the market of what we're paying or is being paid for these types of positions, we thought it necessary to adjust the schedule from a labor grade position from a 22 to a 23, and place it within the wage schedule. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the manager? Seeing none, all right, we'll open the public hearing. Any wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26E, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $250,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project for the installation of solar array at the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant and applying for and accepting the sum of $250,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services American Rescue Plan Act.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the completion of this project will be reducing our operational costs at the wastewater treatment facility, also making a positive impact on the environment, and there's no cost to the ratepayers to implement this program, simply to accept the dollars and complete the project.
Thank you. Any questions from the manager? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Any wish to testify on this item? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Rob Werner. I'm the chair of the Concord Energy and Environment Advisor Committee, and I want to commend the department to apply for these funds. I think it'll be a very good move for the city to hopefully finally get a wastewater treatment plant project, a solar project in place. I know that we have tried a few other times, so hopefully third time is the charm. But this is an important initiative, and I hope that this will spark other initiatives. There is, as you well know, a fair amount of federal money that's available that's starting to flow into the state in terms of both the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, which we, as our committee, we certainly will be digging into and recommending ways for you to pursue those dollars. But again, I want to thank Mr. Chesley and General Services and the administration for pursuing these dollars for this project.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26F, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $100,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project to conduct a process evaluation in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant and applying for and accepting $100,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services American Rescue Plan Act program.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the United States Employee Protection Agency provided the wastewater treatment plant with a new discharge permit in May of 2022. As part of the new permit is required to be more stringent sampling and testing of the plant's effluent water quality. The proposed process of evaluation will provide the city's guidance to successfully achieve the more stringent requirements, provide guidance on current and future infrastructure needs of the facility. Also, at the same time, the $100,000 is being made available to the city to undertake this work. So essentially, it's a wash, so to speak, and we'll be using those dollars to, if you approve it, to implement these changes.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager? None. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Would anybody be opposed to combining item 26G and 26H?
No.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
First item is a resolution readopting the optional veterans tax credit for the city of Concord pursuant to the provisions of RSA 7228. The second is a resolution readopting the all veterans tax credit for the city of Concord pursuant to the provisions of RSA 7228B.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, you're required, if you choose to keep this tax credit, to readopt this, and also looking at expanding the amount here.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this one? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26I, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $13,941 in the Grants and Donations Fund, CPL Foundation Project, to assist the library's mission in providing a variety of equitable services to patrons at the Concord Public Library, and accepting the sum of $13,941 in donations from the Concord Public Library Foundation for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26J, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $75,000 to implement a lead service line inventory and accepting the sum of $75,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Service Line Inventory Grant Program for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 26K, please.
It is a resolution establishing a bridge reserve fund for the purposes of capital repairs, replacements, and/or supplemental funding toward the New Hampshire Department of Transportation Municipal Bridge Aid Program to city bridges as programmed in the annual capital improvements plan, appropriating the sum of $1,959,113.76 as a transfer to said bridge reserve fund, and accepting the sum of $1,959,113.76 for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, member of the council, as that you have a very large bridge improvement project coming up. The idea here was to take these dollars and create a bridge reserve program to be available for the city's match for the Loudon Road Bridge project. That's coming up in future fiscal year.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager? Councilor Fennessy?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, can you maybe provide a little more context for where this money is coming from and why it's being distributed by the state to municipalities at this point?
Basically, yes, Councilor. Basically, there's so much money that has come down from the federal government given to the state. The state is having some difficulties in getting these funds out and employed, so to speak. They have over 300 bridge replacement projects to manage, and the surplus funds would be coming to the community. So communities that have shown that they have the ability to make bridge improvement projects on their own, they've been giving these dollars to. As you know, we've done many of the bridges in Concord are in excellent condition. We have many still to work on, but the Loudon Road Bridge in particular is the next big one to do. And being that it's going to be over $20 million, our share is going to be part of that 80-20 share. And these dollars will be eligible to help provide some of our share. Not all of it, but some of it.
Thank you. No one else? Councilor Keach?
Thank you, Your Honor. To piggyback on Nate's question, are you aware if the funds aren't distributed by the feds, is it lost? Is that an incentive for them to be as generous as they are?
That's one of the reasons the state is pushing these dollars out, is because they understand there's a timeline associated with this.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Takes us to our action phase. Madam Clerk, item 27, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 34, Personnel Rules and Regulations, by amending the holiday section and adding the observance of Juneteenth.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Chambliss.
Thanks, Your Honor. As I indicated earlier in my remarks on Human Services Initiative, I think that this whole package of modifications to our human resources posture is really, really positive. And I think this particular one really helps to underscore the city's commitment to diversity and a recognition of the changing nature of holidays in our country. So I commend the city manager, the city staff for bringing this forward, and I will vote in favor of it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anyone else? Seeing, Councilor Ross Hawkins.
Thank you. I will also be voting in favor. One thing I did want to note is that we only have 2 floating holidays. One is Election Day and one is Christmas. I'm sorry, one is MLK Jr. Civil Rights Day, and it might make sense, since Christmas is the only religious holiday, to in the future explore having that be the floating holiday for parity for religious days off. But for tonight, I'll be voting in support. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we're ready for the vote? Before I got you. I got a whole laundry list for you. I'm gonna announce everyone right before we do the vote.
Great, thank you.
So with that, seeing no further discussion, before we take the vote, I just want to notify the council that Council Brown will take Rule 6. With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Motion's adopted. Item 28, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 34, Personnel Rules and Regulations, Article 34-11, Leave.
Very much. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the question? Please note that Council Brown will take Rule 6. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 29, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $39,250 for paid medical family leave and $11,500 for referral bonuses as new benefits for city employees, and authorizing the use of $50,750 from general fund unassigned fund balance for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, before I call the vote, Council Brown will take Rule 6. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. The motion is adopted by a 2/3 margin. Item 30, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan, Schedule D of Article 35-2, Class Specification Index for the Assistant Information Technology Director position.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 31, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $250,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project for the installation of a solar array at the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant, and applying for and accepting the sum of $250,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services American Rescue Plan Act program for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Mr. Manager, I just have one question for you. So, with the receipt of these dollars, and as former Councilor Warner indicated, this will allow us to move forth with a solar array and such, but this is a much smaller than I think what it, at least what I had envisioned, I think the council had envisioned, to actually support the needs of power at the plant behind the wall, if you will. So this is but just a small start. Is that a fair description?
That's fair, if I may. So I think to put it in perspective, the plant uses about 8,000 kilowatts a day. This array would generate about 80 kilowatts a day. So this would have been enough, essentially handle the domestic needs of the plant. That's as far as you can get with about this amount of money. But the way it'd be installed, it would not preclude us from doing another facility out there. So while this money's available, we wanted to take advantage of it, help reduce our electrical usage and buying, obviously, but not stymie us from doing anything else in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for addressing that question. I was going to ask a similar question. I will be supporting this. I think this is a good first step, but I do think it's important for us to continue to look at the possibility of doing more out there. Obviously, we've tried in the past, and it hasn't quite worked yet, but I'm glad to hear that it won't prevent us from perhaps doing something more.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Having received necessary two-thirds, motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 32, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $100,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project to conduct a process evaluation at the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant and applying for and accepting $100,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services American Rescue Plan Act program for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Have received necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 33, please.
It's a resolution readopting the optional veterans tax credit for the city of Concord pursuant to the provisions of RSA 7228.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, Councilor Brown and Councilor Nyan both declared Rule 6 on this one. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 34, please.
It is a resolution readopting the all veterans tax credit for the city of Concord pursuant to the provisions of RSA 7228B.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Councilor Brown, Councilor Nyan both declare Rule 6 on this. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 35, please.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $13,941 in the Grants and Donations Fund, Concord Public Library Foundation project to assist the library's mission in providing a variety of equitable services to patrons at the Concord Public Library and accepting the sum of $13,941 in donations from the Concord Public Library Foundation for this purpose.
Move approval.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? None. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
My apologies. Before I did that, I should have said Councilor Brown takes Rule 6 on this. One more time. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 36, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $75,000 to implement a lead service line inventory and accepting the sum of $75,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Service Line Inventory Grant Program for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Credit.
This is a lead lining program, correct? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Joe? Did I miss Joe?
That's okay.
No, she said lead.
Oh, sorry.
I don't want the public listening to be confused. It's lead
Seeing no further
program.
discussion, ready for the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 37, please.
It is a resolution establishing a bridge reserve fund for the purposes of capital repairs, replacements, and/or supplemental funding toward the New Hampshire Department of Transportation Municipal Bridge Aid Program to city bridges as programmed in the annual capital improvements plan, appropriating the sum of $1,959,113.76 as a transfer to said bridge reserve fund and accepting the sum of $1,959,113.76 for this purpose.
Move approval.
Motion made. Second to approve this item. Or is there any discussion?
Give us that bridge money.
I just want to point out to the community, this is one of those items. This is why, if you look at the consent agenda tonight, we have a CAFR, a thick document that we all have, we can read, there's lots of information there. But, we get excellent reviews, and we have great sort of stability in terms of the way we do business in our city. And by setting up this reserve fund, this will help offset those costs when it comes to doing the necessary repairs that we want to see at the Loudonor Bridge. Now, we all know that the construction of Loudonor Bridge is probably going to be a little painful at times as they go through the process. But, we're going to see additional improvements there that is going to allow for safer pedestrian, bicycle access, et cetera. But this is the type of financial move that I think that our administration should be really credited for, and for the council for their leadership in thinking long range and not just what was before us, in our tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor, if you're done.
I will stop there if you wish.
Oh,
Council Pierce. You heard enough from me, it's your turn.
You took a breath, you lost your chance. I just wanted to add.
That's a chutzpah over there in Ward 2.
Just going through just to echo what you were saying, going through these grants, there's more than $2.5 million here in grants received. So I think it's a job well done by the city administration to be able to pick that up and use it without putting a burden on the taxpayers. So I thank them for their hard work. Anything else you'd like to add?
Words out of his mouth.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, ready for the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, have received necessary 2/3, motion's adopted. Could I get a motion to take item 38 off table?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded to take item 38 off, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Kennedy. If you could all join us. Just by way of introduction, the Rules Committee has met several times. I think has come to some final conclusions, and we can move this up or down tonight, and after you hear what the changes are, and I've asked our solicitor to walk us through each of the changes that were suggested.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday, the 13th. Big day tomorrow for some of us, I understand. But an exciting evening with the ethics ordinance coming back before you almost a year to date. I think if we waited another month, we would have been a year out. You should be looking at the third supplemental ordinance, and we will walk through the changes that the Rules Committee has made in the hard work that it's put forth since the last time that we met. While there have been changes overall to the ordinance, they're relatively few compared to the fundamental concepts that were brought before you I think it was last March of 2022. But we'll go over those as quickly as I can and as efficiently as I can. And so the first, if you're looking at that third supplemental ordinance, you'll see that in the ethics ordinance, you'll see definitions. And just as we talked about last March 2022, we're going to talk about the definition of conflict of interest. We did a housekeeping edit there, as you'll see. And also note, as I think that you're all quite familiar with, is that the changes are in bold italics, the cross-outs are crossed out, and the same is that normal font that you'll see. And so you'll see we did a housekeeping edit there with changing person to officer of elected official. We did add member, family member, and is an employee of the organization. We added employee of the organization in addition to what was their member of the governing body. So we're talking about the family or the elected official being a member of an organization of its governing body or being an employee of that organization. So it's an employee and member of the organization that would constitute a conflict of interest under this definition of conflict of interest. We also spoke about last March the idea that if you are working for the City of Concord or another, or your family members working for the City of Concord, or you're working for another public entity like the state or the county, the recusal, the conflict is with that department in and of itself. And so this really tracks what we do with budget time or how we address the council meeting tonight, for instance. Each of you can declare the conflict with a specific item on the agenda, but obviously not the whole agenda are you recused or conflicted from. So in this case, it would be the employee or the elected official here would be recused on the department basis only. And then the last section, which we talked about also in March, actually limits it more, but I think is more effective here because it creates a conflict of interest for the elected official when the elected official as a family member is a member of a union, and then that elected official is recused from entering those collective bargaining strategy sessions. And so you're not allowed to participate in discussing those matters in what's a non-meeting under New Hampshire's right to know law, RSA 91A2(1). Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just with respect to this provision, was there any thought given as to whether or not we needed to include anything with respect to non or exempt employees, so not part of a bargaining unit?
So that would, to the extent that the council is discussing exempt employees, that would capture the first part of conflict of interest. And so to the extent that you or a family member has a conflict of interest, then you would be exempt or I guess conflicted out of that conversation based on that in and of itself. Where there is a 91A2 a non-meeting application for this, we see that it's applicable to at least address this where it's cited by statute here. But for, obviously, if you are an elected official and you have a family member who is also working for the city of Concord who is exempt, then looking at this and you're voting on, say, compensation for that family member, or the council's voting on compensation for that family member or other exempt employee, then you would have a conflict in and of itself by the first part of this definition of conflict of interest.
Okay, follow up. So I think my question's more towards if, and I don't know how often we actually do this, but to the extent that there was a non-meeting with respect to exempt employee compensation, do we need something else to make sure that applies, or you're comfortable that the first part of this is going to cover that for us?
I'm comfortable that the first part of this addresses that sufficiently. Yeah.
Please continue.
Okay, so that gets us through the definition of conflict of interest, and that's where the Rules Committee had worked on, and that's what we talked about last month, met last March. The next one is kind of hidden, but it's elected official. You'll see that we removed ward officials from the ethics ordinance. The reason that we did that is that ward officials that's like your supervisors of the checklist, your town moderator at the elections. Those officials, they don't fall within the rubric of this ethics ordinance. They're not falling within the body of public bodies, of committees subject to ordinances or this ethics ordinance within the city of Concord. Those officials are subject specifically to the election laws of the state of New Hampshire. They're identified, their roles are identified, their exact activities as to what they perform on exact times and dates are set forth by statute, and really we saw no role for those persons to be subject to this ordinance. We added a definition of employee of the organization just because that's addressed in the ordinance of itself, and it's self-explanatory. I think everybody understands that. Organization, if you scroll down, you'll see we added organization, which also is kind of housekeeping, self-explanatory concept of what an organization is. Again, under looking at 164, recusal, we did add a final section to recusal. And what that does is it allows an elected official or an officer or an elected official under the ordinance to participate in a matter where they would be recused before a certain body if they are an abutter or the applicant. And so basically what this says is that you don't give if you're going to be a member of the city council, or say you're a member of a certain body in the city, you're not giving up your right to put an addition on your house and you need a variance, or you have to do some type of site plan in the city. This allows you to do so if you're an abutter or an applicant for that type of scenario, but it's limited to that. And you're not allowed to be representing, obviously, third parties. It would be just your individual interests, and you'd be testifying as a public citizen and not as a member of the city council or any other public body that you may be a member of. The last section of recusal addresses that when the city council is in non-meeting, under 91A2, 1A or B, and that's with consultation with legal counsel or strategy and negotiation, or you're in a non-meeting, non-public meeting under 91A3, that fundamentally the recused officer or official is required to leave the room. So that just makes clear that you know that there's the discussion in here about legislative purpose or quasi-judicial meeting. Quasi-judicial meeting under this ordinance, I know we haven't gone back into this again like we did last March, but quasi-judicial, like the planning board or zoning board, you're on that body and you have a conflict, you're required to leave the room. Legislative, where you have, like what we did tonight, where we're passing ordinances or rules relative to the city, you have a conflict, you can stay at the table. That's a legislative function. And that's largely what this body does, and that's largely what you all performed tonight, was a legislative function. And it's appropriate and okay to stay at the table. The last section, again, we spoke about in March, I think at length. I think that's where most of the public testimony was 165, and it's representing private interests before a public body. And there it fundamentally says elected officials shall not appear on behalf of private interests before, and we change any public body. And that tracks what is in the council rules. And then the other one says officers, and that's like non-elected officials, like planning board members or zoning board members or conservation commission members, shall not appear on behalf of another's private interests before the public body of which they are a member. And I think that's where we are.
First questions for the solicitor. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. So I'll start with the last part, and I'll use myself because I'm a lawyer, so this is pretty easy. So if I'm a member of the planning board under this, I can't bring a private client in and represent them before the planning board if I'm a member of the planning board. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. But if I have another client, and hypothetically, I'm going to assume that I'm a member of the planning board again. If I want to bring one of my clients in front of the zoning board, that would be okay because I'm not a member of that board. Is that right?
Well, I think so, but if that's
I'm assuming me as not as an elected
as
official.
long as you're not an elected
Correct.
official in your capacity as Nathan Fennessy, city councilor, I think
Correct.
that's okay, fine, and good. But planning board, no, you can't go in front of the planning board member. Zoning board member, yes, you can go in front of another board because you're an appointed officer.
Right.
Okay. But
And
you
now
give-
me, Nathan Fennessy, as an elected official, under this, I can't represent anybody in front of any boards or in front of the city council.
That's correct. You may, to the extent that you're seeking a variance for that, 10-lane swimming pool you want to put in your backyard, you would be required, you could do that before the zoning board, so long as you advise the zoning board very clearly that you're doing so as a public citizen and not as a member of the city council.
Or if I wanted to contest my neighbor's 10-lane swimming pool, I'd have that opportunity
To the
as well.
extent that you wanted to engage in such activity, you'd have to be clear that you are doing so as an abutter and not as a member of the city council.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I just want to build off of Councilor Fennessy. Even if I was not in a butter, but I had an opinion about someone's swimming pool, and I went before and I said, as a private citizen, I would like to state such and such. As long as I state that I'm a private citizen with my personal opinion, that's okay.
Yes, in your personal capacity.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Councilor Royce Hawkins.
Thank you. I'll raise the same question I raised during the committee proceeding. So where's the line if you go to represent constituent concerns in front of a committee? Like they can't make it, and so you're presenting on their behalf what their concerns are, but you have no stake in it and there's no financial interest.
Well, this makes clear that you're not allowed to represent private interests before any body if you're an elected official. You can present your own individual interest, but not another's interest.
I have a question. I'll wait.
So I tell you what, I'll follow up. So, so prior to about 10 years ago or so, give or take a couple years, Council St. Hilaire and I we broadened those definitions. And because prior to that, you could even appear as an individual, is that correct?
Under the council rules, it was clear that, and at least under the 165, you weren't allowed to appear before any committee.
Great.
Right.
So what we did was, we changed it to allow for, as an individual, you can go and state your piece, correct?
Under the council rules, that's correct. And that wouldn't violate this proposed ordinance.
So I think, I don't want to ask your question for you, but we've come a long way from where we started. And I think you raised an interesting question is, as our role as counselors, you want to advocate for your constituents. So perhaps maybe it'd be a good opportunity for you to explain to the community why there's been such a definitive line in the rules.
Sure. Well, in particular, you may have saw on the council agenda tonight, I'm sure you did, you appointed the zoning board. And so it's important that we don't have the appointing authority go before that body and represent other interests before that body, because that may be construed as an appearance of impropriety. You also appoint many other members of other boards and commissions throughout the city, and therefore that impropriety could be found and create, I guess, challenges to the decision of the body to the extent that they felt that they were being biased or unduly influenced by a governing body member who is responsible for their appointment.
So perhaps you could keep going. So let's say that you choose to do it in a land use, like a planning board or zoning board in particular, those quasi-judicial. And you, the applicant, you lose. You wanted a different outcome and you didn't get it.
Right. So as you all may know, largely it's the zoning board of adjustment and the planning board are quasi-judicial bodies. They're like courts. They have rules of procedure. They have petitioners, and as Councilor Fennessy mentioned, they have abutters who may object to the land use applications that they've submitted. They're seeking to do something particular with their property. People take their property very seriously, and the City of Concord, my office on several occasions has to represent those land use bodies when they are sued. And so to the extent that there is a member of the body testifying before that land use body without complying with the ethics ordinance, that could be brought into the challenge that is being brought forth where a variance was either granted or denied. Because granted or denied, what you'll often have is, to the extent that a variance is granted, you'll have the abutter challenging the 5 elements and anything else that they can argue is a reason why the variance should not have been granted. What was the influence? What was the basis for granting that variance? To the extent that it was denied, again, you're going to have the other side challenging that variance should have been granted. This is a property right, and you're going to go through all the cycles and basis for determining what was the basis of the denial of that variance. And these actions are brought either to the Superior Court of New Hampshire, which is Merrimack County Superior Court in this jurisdiction, and appeal to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. And often what I'm finding is that when they're going to the Superior Court, often they are appealed to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. To the extent that there's a person testifying that should not be testifying in a certain capacity before one of those bodies, they could be brought into the lawsuit.
So if I can put it simply as you try to explain it to me, we as the legislative body, we are appointing the judge. Then we would appear before the judge, tell the judge what we want, and if we don't, and we still can do as individuals though, we broaden that. But in terms of representing the council or representing as a counselor, what you're suggesting is you're protecting ourselves, but you're also protecting the city.
You're protecting the body. You're protecting the fullness of the opinion, the security of that decision that's being rendered by that land use board. And we have made exceptions for the city councilor to testify in their individual capacity, we'll see how that goes. But at least at this juncture. But right now, under at least 165 as it currently stands, we're not changing anything relative to elected officials. Elected officials today And before the adoption of this ordinance, nothing's changes. Elected officials are not allowed to represent private interests before land use boards. And that's the fundamental concept of ethics.
I appreciate you going through that, thank you. Council Pierce.
Just to follow up on that, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the best rule of thumb for we as counselors to use would it be that if we're not in a butter, if we're not the landowner, would the city be best served if we stay out of it and not testify or appear before a quasi-judicial body?
That's, I mean, that's something that came up.
It's not us to
That's
us
what,
as individuals.
and Councilor Pierce, that's a good question, because that's a question that keeps coming up, and that's a question that really gave rise to the Rule 6 amendments that this council did probably 8 or 9 years ago, allowing the city councilor to go in their individual capacity, not to order a board to do anything, but to just state, this is my personal First Amendment thought on this concept. And so that's really what we're butting up here against, right, is the First Amendment of this, of the United States Constitution, and your role not to unduly influence a land use body that you are appointing the judge for, as the mayor has eloquently stated.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Your Honor. You said at the beginning, this is actually just mirroring what's already in our council rules and adding clarity. So beyond the quasi-judicial, it's a rule. You're not supposed to go in front of any committee and represent as a councilor if you're not on that committee, correct?
Right. I mean, you do it in your individual capacity. That's what the rules say at the outset, is that that's what, that's the appropriate measure to take.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you say there's an ethical distinction between appearing before any one of these boards and asking questions versus advocating a position?
Well, that's, I mean, that's what our, yeah, advocating, representing somebody's private interest other than your own is, I think, what this is concerned about. Stating your personal First Amendment thoughts or ideas about a subject matter before a board under the council rules, you've allowed yourself to do that. What this does here in this ordinance is it states that if you're in a butter or you're filing for an application for that variance, you're not giving up your legal rights here. You're not giving up your right as a landowner to pursue that claim before the appropriate adjudicative body, which is important. We don't want to deter people from pursuing public body appointments in the city of Concord, certainly elected officials like this body, saying, yeah, you can't put that addition on your house, or you can't put that outside street light in because you're a member of the governing body. So those are just, yeah, so great question, and I think that that's really what this tries to balance here, is that ethical balance.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So we have item 38 before us. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the ordinance. This would be ordinance 2-23, I believe, right? And then that follows up with a report. So we have a motion before us. Motion is to adopt. Been duly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
I actually just had a question for the committee. I know there had been talk at one point during the proceedings about an ethics disclosure filing form, and I was curious where that, I don't see that included here, so I was curious where that conversation landed.
What is it?
Thank you for that question. The committee, at our last meeting last week, we did discuss an ethics disclosure form, and we discussed a couple of different forms that we had in front of us, the state form, one from the city of Manchester. And so that's something that we have discussed, and we will come back when we have more information, but it did come up.
Thank you.
There seems to be good things in each one, and we're trying to pull from the various ones that are out there what fits for us, because
State one is like 4 pages long, little boxes. We're not sure that's the way to go, and so, yeah. So,
anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, I just had a question. I just want a point of clarification. The motion was on the supplemental ordinance?
Yes, did I not say that? I apologize.
You might have, and I might have.
You did,
Thank you.
But it's supplemental 2-23.
Yep, thank you.
And I believe it's a supplemental ordinance, and does that include deleting the ward officials in that final one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, yes. That's
So I just want to thank the committee, the Rules Committee. It was a lot of work, a lot of something that sounded, wouldn't have so many pieces to it when you finally started speaking and talking it out and doing a lot of what ifs. And I think our first draft was trying to do all the what ifs and cover everything versus just simplifying it and coming together. So Councilor Pierce, Councilor Kretovic, Councilor McNamara, Council Grady Sexton, and Mayor Valet, thank you all for your hard work and sticking it out and thinking it out. And I think we've come out with good product, and I thank you. And I think what it comes down to is when we become city councilors, we take an oath that, our first loyalty is to our office. So it comes down to basically asking yourself, do I have a conflict within due loyalties to my family, to an organization, or to a job? So thank you all very much for your work.
Anyone else? Seeing none? All right, we ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it, motion's adopted. We have 2 items that have been removed from consent. Madam Clerk, item 17, please.
Yes, it was pulled from consent by Councilor Brown. It's the quarterly status report from the city manager on 2022-2023 city council priorities.
Thank you very much. Councilor Brown?
Thank you very much. First of all, there's a lot of great things in this quarterly report, so I want to say that at the outset. I really do. And what I really appreciate about this quarterly report is that it gives us an opportunity to recalibrate, to really look at our priorities, what we're doing great, and what we could improve on. So there are so many things to talk about what we're doing well. I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to touch on one item on page 13 at the very top, the diversity. So since we started this, the priorities, I do like that diversity is listed under sustainability, because I really believe that diversity creates a sustainable, resilient community. So I'm happy that it's there. And since we started, I think in the beginning, the fire department only had 1 female firefighter, and now there's a chance that we'll have up to 5. So that's awesome. I'm really thrilled with that. But the area that I feel that we could do better is in diversifying those folks at the table on boards, commissions, and committees, and in our workforce. And I actually spoke with someone from Circle Works today, and I think it's a wonderful contract. I was really pleased and happy to hear it. One of the areas that I think we could do better is that I believe that we could expand the area that we're looking from beyond just Concord. Circle Works reaches out based on different groupings that the Human Services Director chooses, and they have a broad range of areas and ranges, or a broad range of groupings, but they're only focused on Concord. So I'd like to see that maybe be extended, because I think our new Community Development Deputy City Manager, he's from Hooksett, if I'm correct. No? Oh, you're from here? Oh, all right. I talked to somebody who's from Hooksett, who's an employee. I just feel like we could extend the range beyond just Concord. And also, I learned that they do free webinars so that we can learn how to craft our job applications through some of these free webinars. And if the Human Resources Director adds any of us, then we would have access to those webinars. And I think that would be beneficial, because the mayor is one person, and he has said, send him names for boards, commissions, and committees. And I think we're really struggling with attracting a diverse representation to our boards, committees, and commissions. I am teaching Civics Academy for middle schoolers with Sharm Camacho, the Project Story Kids. and it is phenomenal. But what I've learned is, they really want lights. On the Keach Park field. And unfortunately, there is no representative on RPAC for Ward 9, and most of these kids are from Ward 9. And yes, I recognize that Councilor Bouchard is on Ward 9, but since May, there has been no ward representative beyond a council representative. And I feel like that's really a disservice when we're looking at going forward with CIP projects, when we're looking at the riverfront and we want to include people. If we don't have that representation at the table, we are missing out on those perspectives that would make our city even better than it already is. And I know that, we're struggling with this. We need more input. I think, we know what we know, and I think we need to include more people. So I would hope to, I would like to make a motion that we form an ad hoc committee on diversity that is not just counselors, that maybe have 1 or 2 counselors, but also includes members of the community that actually does the outreach. About 2 years ago, there was a discussion about lights at Keach Park, and Your Honor, you had said, you know what, we told them to go out and talk to the community, but we need to do that. We need to go talk to the community. We need to do what the parking committee has done. The parking committee did an amazing job. They did local media, social media, city newsletter, and they really did outreach. But that didn't happen for the lights at Keach Park. And so we missed out on that. I think we need help. And I really feel like that help can come from a small group that talks with one another, that is connected in the community. And I'm grateful that Callum O'Donzo was appointed to the Community Development Advisory Committee. He was incredibly valuable and helpful to me when I was needing input on I-93. He connected me to shop owners on Loudon Road, and he explained to me, they're not going to speak to you directly. You have to, they have to talk with somebody they trust, and he was that person, and that's why I feel like we need a committee that is broader than just us. So I would like you to entertain that motion for discussion.
Thank you. Before I do anything like that, Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand raised.
I did. Thank you, Mayor. I think as far as the Ward 9, the seat has been recently vacated, so it has not been open for a very long period of time. And the woman who sat on that seat was definitely a very diverse member of the community. So I think you misspoke on that, since it's been only vacant, I think maybe since December. Second of all, I think there's been a lot of misinformation about the Keach lights and about why it is where it is now, which I don't want to address now. But anyway, that's my piece. Thank you.
Councilor Nye.
I had a couple of questions. One part that concerned me, Councilor Brown, is you said you contacted Circle Works as the city's contractor, or?
I just wanted to learn what they were. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then the follow-up part is, you had indicated you wanted Circle Works to do more other than just doing work within the city, and I didn't understand what you were talking about.
Councilor Brown.
I was trying to learn what Circle Works was, and they will call you, if, so I plugged in my phone number and spoke with a representative and just asked them about their program. And what they do is they will take job listings and they will send it out to lots of different groups, and you have a lot of control over which groups and where they go, like which region you're choosing. So I learned that the region that is chosen was Concord, and I think it would be great if we expanded our reach beyond just Concord job applicants.
Mr. Manager.
Could I ask Jen Johnson, who's the one who actually uses Circle Works, to come explain? This is a good tool that we brought forward and asked for you to fund, and you did fund it, and we found it very valuable. So, Jen, while you happen to be here, would you mind?
No, I don't mind at all. I have been using Circa since the council approved the PCR last budget cycle. And the service takes our job postings, which we typically put out on Fridays, and it sends it out to organizations. And each month, I get a report of the types of postings I did. So I brought the January report as an example. So right now, we have 23 active jobs on Circa. 8 new ones were created in the month of January. 835 job views through their postings to the organizations that they send it out to. 31 clicks on jobs, so not a great rate, but still something. And there were 130 outreaches sent out based on that. So I do want to correct Councilor Brown that it's not just Concord that we send them out to. I actually pulled up a list of the organizations. As an example, Easter Seals in Manchester is one organization that jobs get sent to, targeting people with disabilities looking for work. So we do look at community agencies. We've gone as far as Keene, UNH. So there's certainly, I'm open to expanding it. I know in a lot of areas we're looking nationwide for jobs, not just from a diversity standpoint, just from we need to hire people standpoint. And hopefully we get who we need for these positions. And if they can be representative candidates from these pools, I would love that. As an example of the 130 jobs that were sent to community organizations since we started Circa, which was in July, 9% were sent to organizations that focus on women, 4% people of color, 35% individuals with disabilities, 15% veteran organizations, and then the rest fall into other categories, which you can dive deep into with the reporting. And I get the report each month. I have participated in their webinars because it is fascinating. You can learn a lot about what they do. And they also will help you add agencies. Like I added the NAACP out of Manchester as an agency because they're close, and I've worked with James McKim quite a bit. I find him to be helpful. And he's actually on our Friday distribution, because I post jobs on Fridays with my my generalist. And we send out, and I brought a list of that, area agencies via email that people we've talked to. So he gets an email directly from us, not just through a Circa job posting, which that helped me because there's agencies I don't know about that they could post the jobs to. And it would be me going out to 75 different organizations typing in job postings, whereas this organization can do it through their software.
So again, I want to thank you for funding that. You can see how valuable it is. We've already previously addressed all your concerns, so there's nothing else to follow up on. Everything's taken care of. We've already done it in advance. So thank you for bringing those up, but everything's been taken care of.
This is, I don't know who to direct this to, but I'm sure I should remember, but I've forgotten. Does this work on a subscription model? How do we pay for the service?
Yeah, it's a contract. So I have a year contract, and then it's been added to the budget so I can renew. But we could also pursue other organizations that do similar work if I was dissatisfied with the product.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Johnston, thank you for coming up here and answering our questions. There are also free sites that we participate in or that we do outreach in, we as the city as a whole. In fact, one of them is a listserv for HR professionals throughout Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. There are some people from Connecticut and Rhode Island in that group as well. And often some of the postings that are there are, hey, I have a workforce reduction and I have some people that are going to be let go, and you raise, because I'm in this listserv, you raise your hand, send them my way. So there are ways to be proactive without costing any money whatsoever. And I want to commend you for that, because I do see your postings and your outreach coming through saying, raising your hand and going, I've got jobs. And I know the outer conversations happen in the background, as they should, but I appreciate the efforts that are not costing taxpayers money as well.
Anyone else? Councilor Isaac.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not a question for you. Oh, wait.
Want me to get down?
Actually, I do have from.
Okay.
So this is kind of unique. I haven't really run into this one before. So this is a management tool that the legislative body funded. You use this management tool. We have a member of the legislative body who outreached to the group, clearly got a lot of information. I'm taking you for your word. How could somebody at the company share so many things that don't seem to jive with what you're sharing?
I do know he reached out to me, Steve McCullough.
Yep.
He asked if you were an employee.
They just sound like two different stories. That's why I'm trying to.
He told me he released information about how Circa works, not specific to our company's or our organization's specific functioning. So I have the email. That's what he relayed to me.
Okay, thank you. Anybody further? Seeing that, don't go too far, but appreciate it.
I don't blame you.
Councilor Simons.
Thank you. I would be willing to second a motion to establish a diversity, equity, inclusion committee for City Council. I'm aware that of the 17-page city priorities document, there's one section around diversity, and it's a paragraph and a half, and it's got good content in it. But we had talked a little bit about over the last couple of years about trying to make sure that as a council and a body that we're having the community conversations that we'd like to have around those topics. So I would certainly support an effort to have a special committee that would look at how we as a council and a city outside of our workforce, and it sounds like the work being done there is great, but as a community can really have some of those conversations as well.
Thank you very much. We have a motion made and seconded. Before we go too deep in this, I'd just show my cards. I think it's a worthy idea. I think that I'm going to vote against this motion, not because I'm not going to do it, because I've actually been working on something to put together. I think what has been moved and seconded is a little bit more narrow than I think we should actually do. It shouldn't be just council, it should be community oriented. So I think you're going to find if you hold just a little bit, you'll probably see something that is going to be a little more comprehensive, and that this would be duplicative of what was coming your way. So that's, as I said, not because I oppose the idea, but because I think there's something on a grander scale. Council 9.
Based upon what you said, I'll hold my question. Thank you.
That's somebody over here.
As will I.
Councilor Sawkins.
Thank you. With all due respect, I've been waiting since June 2020 for these conversations, so I'm a little done with waiting and would like to move forward with the supportive motion. So if there's more information to be shared about things forthcoming, I would love to hear it, but I think part of it is we need this investment of the City Council and the cooperation and understanding of everyone here in order to move these things forward. But we have had the same conversation several times. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I think the basis to begin the conversation, we just heard tonight that you had a member of the legislative body call a management tool contract, and we think we've heard that much of the information, unfortunately, was counter to what was provided. They were doing a lot of these things. So I don't know that the problem is necessarily with the city in terms of its hiring practice and such, in terms of its outreach. I think diversity and those issues, I think, are a much larger scale. So that's why I'll vote for it at the moment. Is anyone else? Are you going to continue to go ahead? Councilor Hawkins.
I think we both heard a different motion made. I heard a motion made around looking at city committees and participation in them. Is that correct, Councilor?
Madam Clerk, what did you have for a motion?
Councilor Brown moved to form an ad hoc committee on diversity that had members of City Council and committee members in it.
Okay. Maybe I misunderstood, but that's the motion. Councilor Brown?
I would just like to clarify, because just as the city is using another service to help reach out to this community, I see this ad hoc committee to help us as a council to get the input for boards, commissions, committees, not for city employment. It is just so that we don't have representation on a lot of our boards, committees, and commissions. So it really is, not the city, it is for the council. And I imagine that it would have a couple of counselors, but primarily community members to help inform us as a council.
Appreciate that. I would just simply share that I think we'd always do better. I think I appreciate your comments. But I also want to say that I very much appreciate those who are serving on our committees. We have many, many volunteers who are serving on boards and commissions, and ranging from everything from, planning board to the tree committee. And I think that that is probably one of the, strengths of this community, is the fact that we do have such a willingness of a community to volunteer on city activities and such that does make it better. So we can be better? Absolutely. But I don't want anybody who is currently serving to feel somehow that they are not doing a good job, that they're inadequate. I think many of the committees are, as I said, they do yeoman's work. So I had somebody over here, Council Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I fully support the concept of a diversity committee. I'll be voting against the motion, though, because I'd like to see what the mayor has planned, and also because I'd like to support the mayor's purview to appoint ad hoc committees. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr.
Grady,
Mayor. Do you plan to have something by the next meeting, or?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
If I didn't have computer problems, it probably would have been done tonight.
I would just like to thank Councilor Nye for bringing out the issue of non-interference of city council with management prerogatives, and to make sure so that you stay in conformance with the charter and your council rules, that you do not get involved in management prerogatives. Thank you very much for recognizing me.
Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. I think, like Councilor Champlin, I am not opposed to the idea. I'm just not sure what's been put in front of us in the context in which it's been raised is totally appropriate. I do have some concerns about some of the information that was obtained and shared in the context of hiring, which was the context in which we got this report. And yet what's being proposed really has nothing to do with hiring. It has to do with how we identify and populate our committees. And I think those are two separate issues. I think management has been doing exactly what we asked them to do with respect to hiring. And I think they're using the tools. Thank you again, Jenna, for coming up and tell us about what's been done. So I think we're doing exactly what we requested management to do on the hiring front. Now, with respect to committees and whatnot, I think it's very worthy. We should consider putting a appropriate committee together. Honestly, I don't know what that proposal is tonight, because basically we're just being told we should have a committee. There's no information about how many people, where they're going to come from, who's going to appoint them. So I'm not sure there's really anything in front of us to consider, quite frankly. So in the interest of moving this along, I'm happy to consider what the mayor puts forward next month. I think it's an important conversation that we should have. And so I'll be voting against the motion at this point.
Anyone else? Okay, so we have motions been made and seconded before us. Are we clear on the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
The nays have it. Can
Move
we get
approval of the report.
Second.
motion, excuse me?
Roll call vote, please.
Yep. So we have a motion made to accept the item number 17. This is the report, the current status of the City Council priorities established on February 17, 2022. A roll call has been requested. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Bullock.
Yes.
Councilor Brown.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor McNamara.
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor Nyan.
I have a question regarding the vote. This is to approve the report?
Simply to accept the report.
Thank you. Yes.
And Counselor Pierce.
Yes.
Point of clarification, my roll call was for the motion made by Councilor Brown.
That motion was defeated by voice votes. Sorry, I thought you meant for the, we had accepted a motion on this one, then you asked for a roll call, so I thought you were asking for a roll call on this one.
I'll accept it and move forward.
Excuse me?
I'll accept the ruling of the chair.
Okay, the motion's been adopted. We have before us item 21, Madam Clerk.
It was pulled from the consent agenda by Counselor Nyan. It's a report from the Ad hoc Outdoor Dining and Food Truck Committee recommending changes to the city's outdoor dining permit program.
Councilor Nyan.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of questions regarding the report. I thought it was well done. Obviously, a great deal of thought went into this. I also had a chance to briefly speak with Councilor Pierce about this, who answered some of my questions. But in the interest of sharing my thoughts with the entire group, my first question relates to the umbrella component of the ordinance, in that specifically it says umbrellas shall not be torn, tattered, or faded. And then another section says the umbrella shall not carry any advertising logos other than that of the establishment. Last year, I know there was some input and inquiry from businesses relative to umbrellas that could be donated by vendors that would have branded logos on the exterior of the umbrellas, excuse me. Those would be provided, typically are provided free of charge to the business. So my question, I'm hoping someone from the committee can comment, was there any consideration to that element, that we may be creating financial burdens for these businesses that otherwise could be eliminated through private donations or corporate donations?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer that.
Please.
Yes, if memory serves me correctly, this issue did come up last year when we first went to this program, and we did get some pushback from restaurateurs saying, I already have these umbrellas, this is short notice. The committee reconsidered and allowed them to continue with their umbrellas as long as they were not worn and tattered and faded, as outlined in the report. And but this year, and we did say that come 2023, if we continue with the program, that the umbrellas would be a requirement. We understand that there's a financial burden to do that, to go out and buy their own. There was a program, there was some talk about using a local distributor. I talked to that distributor this afternoon to see if anything happened with that, and nothing has. He's not interested in putting out umbrellas that don't have the logo on the products that he carries, and I don't blame him. So the committee decided to go ahead and communicate with the restaurant owners that umbrellas would not carry a commercial logo. We think it adds to the aesthetics to downtown, and I think we polled, and I had a few pictures of the downtown umbrellas, and there were quite a few that just had the name of the restaurants on it. So some have complied and some did not. But this year, it's our recommendation, it's in the ordinance that they do. I don't know if anyone else from the committee wanted to add to that, but is my memory correct? Yes.
A follow-up question? I don't know if it's possible, but perhaps as an alternative solution would be, if we're concerned about the aesthetics, to allow branding of the umbrellas on the interior, the underside of the umbrella for the patrons who are sitting there, rather than having it, I don't even know if those such things exist, but might be a compromise resolution to address some of those concerns. And a follow-up question, Your Honor, and my understanding is that the answer to this question is item number 13 of the agenda. Last year, we had a discussion about the barriers that would be used for outdoor dining. It was about a beautification effort and what we could do as a council, staff, city, to encourage beautification of the Jersey barriers. And my understanding is that there's been some money set aside to encourage, I'll say, artistic works on the barriers. And I don't know if you could provide a little more information about that component.
You're gonna get a brush.
Well,
That you don't want.
we did have a safety issue last year. A truck did run into the water-filled barriers, and luckily, or unluckily, it happened at 3 in the morning, so no one in front of the restaurant was hurt, but it did wreck the truck and it did wreck the barrier. And it really highlighted the safety of it. And I don't know, Matt, if he wanted to add anything to it, but we are looking to add Jersey barriers. There are some programs here where if they want to do beautification, the concrete ones, so we're going to go from 800 pounds to 8,000 pounds apiece, which will add for a little bit more safety. And there's some requests for money to do that. Then there's a number in the outline of beautification. There's places where they can hang boxes over the top of them and so on and so. So we're going to be encouraging that. I'm not sure. I don't remember if there are other members of the committee whether or not we had money set aside. Perhaps the city manager can shed some light.
On your set for a public hearing early in the meeting, you put an item for next month's action to $18,000 to purchase the barriers, $6,000 to put them in and out for the equipment, and then $10,000 for potential beautification of the barriers, and decided that the ad hoc dining committee, while they wanted them beautified, didn't want to be involved in the beautification. So deferred that to administration to make sure that they were done in a way that was tasteful for the Concord community. So you'll be voting on that at the next meeting.
Yeah. There was not a big show of hands of people that wanted to go out from the committee that wanted to paint the Jersey barriers. So.
And the idea would be to have them installed for this,
that's right.
for the season.
Right. And as I will remind everyone, it's been successful. We also had a food truck component to this. Gwen Williams has done a good job. We want to communicate this with this vote tonight. If it's positive, the information will be going out to the restaurant owners with the new guidelines, and we'll be off and running. And of course, I do get calls, and it's a voluntary program. And no one has to do it. The rent is cheap. It works out to about 50 cents a month per square foot, which is much cheaper than the space they have inside the restaurant. So, and it adds to the ambiance of downtown. I love it, so I'll stop there.
I was just going to say that Councilor Nine, the part of the beautification we talked about was being consistent with planters or something that was uniform up and down Main Street. And I think we felt that the city had a good eye and good task on that. That helps.
House Chaplain.
Thank you, Your Honor. I for one, was pleased when I looked ahead at the items posted for public hearing next month, to see that that the committee and the city administration had considered beautification of the concrete Jersey barriers. And I would just hope, and this is consistent, maybe this is consistent with the recommendation, excuse me, of the committee, that an eye is given towards professional work. I think the inclination is to have kids do it, to have amateurs do it. And my observation from looking at those examples from other communities is that they're great public spirited activities, but they just don't look great. And if they're not consistent, at least consistent from dining area to dining area, they're more of a detriment than a benefit. So I'm sure that the city management, the city administration is going to be looking at those factors.
So you don't support the kids?
I absolutely support kids.
On the underside of the barrier.
No.
I had a question. Well, first I want to thank the committee. It looks like you all have done a great deal of work. I guess I had a question kind of going to some of the points that Councilor Nyan raised. It looks like from the report, we're really looking at about 4 restaurants that have, that we expect to be involved in the program, perhaps another 1 or 2. Has there been discussion and feedback from them with respect to, for example, the umbrella issue? Are people comfortable with the expectations that we'll be placing on them?
You want to talk about Tandy's visiting
So-
and having a conversation with us?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead. If you want.
sorry.
No, go ahead if you want.
I may not remember all the details, but we did have the owners of Tandy's join us for a meeting and share their concerns. And I think giving them the year, they were receptive to that. And they felt that it was a workable, so I guess to answer your question, we did talk to business owners and several of them were receptive and said, okay, it was something they wanted to continue with and we weren't hindering them from doing it the next year.
If I may just add, if, with approval tonight, then the word will go out to the restaurateurs to let them know. And the number, we have about 20 restaurants that take advantage of this. And we hope to see more food trucks too.
So I would simply add that it feels like about 4 that are going to use the Jersey barriers.
That was my comment, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
sorry.
And I think that what the committee, at least my takeaway for the committee, is that the number 1 driving factor above all else is safety. And after looking at the pictures from the accident into the Barley House, the barriers were helpful, but thank goodness no one was eating on the other side because somebody would have seriously, given the pictures, somebody would potentially seriously gotten hurt. And so I think that it became instantly, hey, we've got to move to, as Council Pierce said, the 8,000-pound solution as opposed to the 800-pound solution. And in terms of how they're beautified, well, that's beyond me, so that's another committee that I've never served on. But in terms of the umbrellas, and I appreciate bringing the question up, I think it's worth reminding ourselves that this is the 3rd year of this program. And this program began because the restaurants came to us and said, hey, we are suffering in our restaurants. We need outside so that we have an opportunity to make money and serve our clientele, et cetera, and give everybody an opportunity. Someone who may not want to go inside, give someone the opportunity to be outside. So the first year it was kind of just a free for all. And if you can remember, we had one establishment where it had like a beach umbrella, a patio umbrella, a golf umbrella. It was a little bit of everything and then some. And so the committee said, no, we can do better than that as a community. And the next year we went to uniform umbrellas, same color systems and such, or what do we call them? And we really wanted to kind of move to the non-logo typeface, unless you wanted to advertise your particular establishment. And we do have some restaurants downtown who do have umbrellas with their logos of their restaurants, et cetera. We got a significant amount of feedback, specific from Greg Tandy, Barley House, and a few others, who said, gosh, you're really informing us really late. We don't have time to order these things. And to the supply chain issues, we had a committee, I thought, did the right thing. We listened to their concerns. We pulled it back and said, just keep them generally the same color coding, et cetera. And we did reach out because most of these umbrellas that the establishment are getting from beer distributors. Let's say what it is. It's beer distributors who are giving free umbrellas. And as Council Pierce said, the beer distributors never ever imagined they'd be in the umbrella business, nor do they want to be. So when now going in the 3rd year, everyone's been on notice last year. There should be absolutely no surprise by any establishment that we wanted to be consistent to where we were last year. Everyone has had over a year now to plan to get the umbrellas, to keep with the color coding and such, and to go to something little classier, if you will, that is, I think, really what our Main Street and establishments downtown deserve. It's more than just downtown, obviously, but I think that it's worthy of stepping up our game a bit. So in terms of safety, in terms of people have been on notice for 3 years, there should be no issues. At the 3rd year, everybody understands what the situation is, And I'll leave you with this. When you go online or you look for a picture of Concord, there's two pictures that pop up more than any other I find. One is of the clock tower, or other than the Capitol, that is, I'm sorry. The clock tower seems to be very popular. And the second one is that shot down Main Street. And one of the reasons why it seems to be so attractive is because it's got those red umbrellas kind of right dead center on Main Street, and it creates a place of gathering and such. And it's interesting how that color, that red pop that goes on Main Street is so attractive to a lot of people, a gathering spot. So everyone should be on notice. I don't think there should be a whole lot of concerns. And there's been plenty of opportunity to plan. Did I miss anything, Councilor Pierce?
No.
Did you have any other further concerns, or?
No, I was going to ask the questions. Again, I would certainly encourage, if there's a way to accommodate something on the underside of the umbrellas, might be a great accommodation, but it was just thoughts. So with that, I move to accept the report.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve to accept the report. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, am I correct to say that was the end of all the items?
Yes.
Okay, that takes us to the end of our business this evening. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Do you wanna
Oh,
do
wait, I'm sorry.
just comments? I'm sorry.
My apologies, that's why I asked.
Oh, yeah.
I was-
meant
I'd
real
skipped it.
business.
Okay. So we do have comments and by councilors and such. Anybody like to share anything? Councilor Pierce.
I have a couple of things. First of all, congratulations to Matt Walsh as our new deputy city manager. And hope we don't ruin him anymore.
Good time testing.
I was actually going to applaud Councilor Pierce.
And secondly, for those in Ward 2 and the local area, we're having a community meeting on February 22nd at Beaver Meadows School. The developer wants to meet with the neighbors about one of the developments that are planned for out there. So it's their meeting, and I helped them put it together, and we'd love to have the folks come out at 6:30 to 8 at Beaver Meadows School on February 22nd. I'll try to get some chairs. I understand the seats in there that are there now are very low to the ground. So that's the end of my comments. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes, so actually February is Black History Month, so I just want to say that. And Martin Toe and Destin Boy are providing a Unity concert, which is free. It's at the Bank of New Hampshire stage, and this council may remember Martin Toe because he came before the council in 2017 to first ask for lights. So we didn't give him lights, but you can see him under the lights February 24th, the Unity concert. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
At the Bank of New Hampshire stage.
Councilor Huckins.
Quite the Bank of New Hampshire stage night. I also just wanted to say we have a new business in town, or a new location for business in town, Pachulo's Kitchen. Pachulo Muhammad is at the Bank of New Hampshire stage with Somali meat pies now. I believe it's Wednesday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. And it's a really great collaboration between a local restaurateur and the commercial kitchen facilities that they have that aren't in use all the time that the Bank of New Hampshire stage is open. So I want to thank the staff over there and the leadership for their vision in creating that opportunity for a community member to grow her business, and they're delicious. So.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Manager, everything?
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Okay. So with that, how are we doing now?
You're good.
All right. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Have a good week.
Back up to the stages across the roads.
And then
Get your balance.